Hello, peoples. A couple weeks ago, I asked for you guys to rank the Marvel movies down in the comment section, and I went on all my other social media platforms, and I asked people to rank them for me. But I did get a good amount of responses, so thank you for all those who did. But I did ended up going, I didn't, listen, I did not go to sources I don't trust. I didn't do community sources like Rotten Tomatoes because that's just a roundup of everything already. I wanted to do something my own. And so I decided, and so I was thinking, where do I go? Where do I go? So I went to Letterboxd. I went to like one person owned sites that I trust, and I probably got like about 100 in. I did a lot. So yeah, comparing this list is, when I think about it, it's a pretty it's very the way that you would expect, but the fact that I asked fans to rank it specifically, not critics, some of the things I was expecting, I'm just going to say something that doesn't give too much away, but I totally expected Captain Marvel to be in last place because that's how I know the fans treat the movie. And it didn't get last place, and so that was quite shocking to me. And yeah, I was thinking either Captain Marvel's going to get last place or Thor the Dark World's going to get last place, but neither one of them did get last place. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And, well, I'm not going to say anything because that's like the end of the video. So yeah, anyways, coming in at number 23, you guys voted The Incredible Hulk. I don't blame you. It's my number 23 as well. I don't like this movie either. Also, I averaged out a score, by the way. But I don't think these scores are too accurate because if that's the case, then we really don't start to get good scores until number 11. So, but I'm going to say it anyways, what the average score, well, not necessarily score. What I did was, every single place that it was in, it got a point higher. So if it was in first place, it'd get 23 points. If it was in if it was in 23rd place, it'd get 1 point. And so I did that, divided it by 10, and this is with the numbers that I got. But yeah, like I said, I get why Hulk's in the last place. Some people just put it in last place just to put it in last place because it's the oddball of the MCU, but I genuinely think, personally, it's a terrible movie, and it's just a terrible plot overall. It's, let's run away with Hulk movie, and then Abominations is going to show up at the end, so Hulk could punch something type. And I've seen movies like this before. It's incredibly average, but heck, with Marvel, incredibly average with Marvel is not that great. So, yeah, the overall score, from what I did from my math, this probably isn't at all accurate, but it's a 17. And the score goes from like 0 to 100, to put it in perspective. Okay, coming in at number 22, yep, you called it, Thor the Dark World. I also joined a Facebook group to ask for rankings, but not a couple people responded. But I also put down, like, what makes Thor the Dark World so terrible? Because personally, I'm not the biggest fan. I think I give this movie about a 6 out of 10. But I don't think it's as terrible as some people say. So I put on the Facebook group, I was like, what makes this movie bad? And I got the same answer every time: the villain. And to be completely honest, I think there's the villain in Thor the Dark World is incredibly average, just nothing that great, but he's still like on the same par with like Red Skull. He's not memorable, or Malekith, I think, from Doctor Strange. Like, they're both on the same level. It's a bad villain. Bad villains are bad villains. I don't think they can. He barely got any screen time, so I don't see how he's like say like, oh, the villain's terrible. But yeah, I know a lot of other people's complaint was that there's no real character development, which I get, and they just don't like the Thor and Jane thing. But yeah, I think this movie gets a little too much hate, but you know how fans are. They just kind of ride with the waves, or they genuinely think it. Who knows? But yeah, they gave this movie a 19. Coming in the not number one, coming in the number 21 is Iron Man 2. I was expecting Iron Man 3 to be actually below this, and I was quite shocked that it didn't. But most people had this with most of the list. Most people had this like right at number 21. Personally, I have a lot of fun with Iron Man 2. Yes, I can agree. I can definitely agree. It is not perfect at all and has a lot of problems, but it's one of those movies, like the last 30 minutes where Iron Man and Rhodey are just busting through these drone things. or whatever. It's just awesome. It's probably some of the best action the whole entire MCU has to offer, because believe me, I still get spine chills every single time, but when both of them close their helmet and they just, it's just amazing. That last part of the movie. But besides that, there's nothing too memorable. I do remember seeing this movie in theaters. It's one of the first Marvel movies I actually saw in theaters, if not the first. And so part of that kind of wants me to say I like this movie more than I do. But at the end of the day, it's Iron Man 2. It's not the best movie ever. But there is things I do like about it. And the fans gave Iron Man 2 a 29. Coming in at number 20 is probably the biggest gap from something on my list and this list. And number 20 is Thor. I love Thor. You'll see that once I tell you guys the score, the audience don't really like Thor. And I don't know why. When this movie first came out, it was well reviewed. People went to go see it. Everyone liked it. But all of a sudden, because Thor: The Dark World wasn't the best movie ever, according to the audience, like I said, I thought it was fine. But everyone just turned on the first Thor. And the thing that I think really pushed people to turn on the first Thor is Thor Ragnarok, because Thor Ragnarok is just so much better than the first two. But, well, actually, I don't have Thor way too far away from Ragnarok on my list. But I've always thought the Ice Giants were quite a scary looking villain. What they did with Loki in this movie was great. Chris Hemsworth was great. All the scenes on Earth was great. I love Natalie Portman, and I know like there's a bunch of exposition with like, oh, Earth magic is science, but stuff like that. But I think it really works for the movie. It's a decent one of the startup movies. It captures the kind of the Marvel vibe, but I like the way that they show Asgard. It's original, it's new, and it's visually striking. I know there's not much of it, but I don't mind that he was on Earth for a lot of the movie. But yeah. Anyways, but personally, I guess the fans just thought this was too boring for the middle part where, it just kind of became a romantic movie with Thor and Jane. And I get that, but I think there's a lot more to it than just that. And the fans gave it a 38. Coming into number 19 by the fans is Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought this movie was going to be a lot higher. Personally, it's down there for me. I don't like either one of the Ant-Man movies. But I think Ant-Man and the Wasp is worse than Ant-Man. But Ant-Man and the Wasp. Here's the thing. It was either people had this middle of the road, or people had it like towards the bottom, like me. And so I guess this is kind of like the evening out spot right here. I guess because people just kind of have, a sweet spot for this movie. I really don't know why people like this movie, but Ant-Man and the Wasp, I guess people have it there because it's light. It really does build your anticipation for Endgame. But the thing about this movie is I was hyped up. I was expecting to have a really, really good Ant-Man movie. And we got a Saturday morning cartoon. But once you come off something like Infinity War, I know people say, well, it's light. You just don't get it. You were expecting too much of a grand scale. I'm like, no, I was expecting a good movie. I was expecting maybe one villain instead of three. After we have a villain like Thanos, and then we get three bland villains that I have a hard time thinking on myself. Lawrence Fishburne's in this movie. I forgot about that. But I guess the fans just it's towards the bottom, but I think this is where the fans are kind of 50-50. Half of them think, oh, it's a fun time. It's like, sit down and watch it. It's fun. And the other half probably agree with me. And the fans gave this one a 41. And remember, this score isn't 100% accurate that the fans give it. This is just me estimating based off of the ranks and the parts and it was a lot of math. I just took geometry this year and put a lot of efforts into this. And I did use zero geometry. Thanks, school system. Okay. Number 18 is Captain Marvel. I'm fairly impressed that this movie got this high on the list. Don't get me wrong. I think I have Captain Marvel around this area, but I was expecting fans to put this in last place because you know how fans are with this movie. I know a lot of people that actively hate this movie, thinks it's one of the worst things they've ever seen. And I'm like one of the only people that goes, it's fine. It's not amazing, but it's okay. But of course, when I say that, everyone thinks I'm a huge Captain Marvel lover and they think just because you think a movie's, when people hate a movie and you think it's people all of a sudden think that you love it and it's one of your favorites, but it's not one of my favorites. I think it's just another Marvel adventure. It's my opinion of Captain Marvel is like what the average fan's opinion is of Ant-Man and the Wasp is the best way to put it. They had a lot of stuff that it had going for it. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. Brie Larson, I don't think she was miscast. I think she was just terribly written. I think Marvel Studios said, "Oh, we got an Oscar-winning actress. Let's not put any effort into her because she'll handle everything and people will praise her for her performance." But when you have nothing to give her, they just take, her Oscar resume and say, "Okay, recording." That's how I felt like Brie Larson happened in this role. The Skrulls are a cool addition, but they're not really a villain in this movie, and so they kind of felt kind of short-handed, and I've never been the biggest fan of Ben Mendelsohn's characters. I think he's always, whenever I see his face, I'm like, oh, great, generic villain. The guy from Rogue One. Like, I know there are people who really do like Ben Mendelsohn, but I've never been the biggest fan of him personally. But, like I said, there's the reason why this is one of those other movies that I think a reason why I ended up on this right here is because either people had it on like towards the top. I mean, towards the not the top. People either had it like very at the bottom or middle of the road, and this is why it's at number 18, which is like the in between area. But so it's either people think it's meh or they hate it, and this is where it kind of evened out, I guess. So yeah, I guess the audience gave this a 44. And just letting you know, the scores really don't get good until the second half of the list because there's like the first half of Marvel movies and the second half to the fans, I guess. And so just don't take these scores too personally. It's just I calculated them. I'm just going to say them anyways. Coming in at number 17 is the first Ant-Man. I watched this movie recently, and I wasn't too impressed the most recent time I watched it, but actually I want to watch this again and reform my opinion, because last time I watched this, I gave it a 5 out of 10. Before it was like a 6-ish. But I want to watch this again. But this is where I guess where the list, or I think according to the fans, where it starts to get decent. I'm not, like I said, last time I watched this, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie. I'm not surprised. I thought it would kind of end up like around this area. There was like 1 or 2 people that had it in like top 10, just only 1 or 2. But besides that, it was either middle of the road or towards the back. Great. Of course, I think what really, for the people that did like it, I think what really does it for them is Paul Rudd in the leading role of Ant-Man, and there's some really good comedy in here as well. But of course, there's the diehard fans, which I think ranked a little bit lower because of the copy and paste of the first Iron Man movie. Coming in at number 16, sorry about that, Ant-Man got a 46. Anyways, coming in at number 16 is Avengers Age of Ultron. I feel like this movie gets a bad rap because people always take one of the movies from one of the trilogies or however long a series is. They always take the one that's called the worst one and say it's trash. In my opinion, I really like all of the Avengers movies. I really like all of them. And I think, on my list, I think all of them are like in the top half, all 4 of them. I always really liked Age of Ultron, and it is the worst Avengers movie, but people take, oh, it's the worst Avengers movie, it sucks. That's not the case. It's the worst Avengers movie, but it's still pretty good. But that's where I think the fans kind of get misproceeded because, like, of course, Hulk, people really don't know much about that movie. They gave it last place. Thor: The Dark World, it's universally hated and considered one of the worst. They gave it last place. Iron Man 2, it's the bad Iron Man movie. It got the next one. And I know it sounds really dumb when I'm saying it. I know it is the overall rap, but I feel like there are people out there that just say certain lists and rankings just because of word of mouth and don't really form their own opinion, because all of these lists look fairly the same. But yeah, thanks for hitting that dislike button, person. Kidding. Hope you didn't hit the dislike. Please hit that thumbs up. Anyways, Age of Ultron, I think what really didn't do it for this movie and what irritated fans is all the setup that they're trying to do. Personally, I don't mind a lot of the setup. I like most of the setup because that means, yay, we're getting more characters. And I never felt like it was overpushed, overbounded. Yes, it is a lot, but I think they actually balanced it quite nicely. Ultron is my problem with the movie. The trailers, like I said, make them look scary. I'm all about villains, and I think villains are very, very, very important. Thank God Marvel doesn't like villains affect their movies that much. But Ultron, I was in the movie. I was kind of afraid of him all the way up to the omelet joke. So about for the first 30 minutes, I was like, "Oh crap, Ultron's gonna kill people," and well, he does kill Quicksilver, but and it's just you have him humming Pinocchio, and while he kills Quicksilver, it was supposed to be that dark movie, and it was the kind of weird tone movie. But there is still a lot of great moments when this movie gets great. Sometimes it tops the first Avengers, but when sometimes it gets bad, it just kind of gets into this weird slump. But personally, I really like this movie, but this is what I'm assuming that the fans are probably thinking. So that's what I'm here to do. And the fans gave this a 50. And I give this movie like an 85, just to keep that in mind. Okay, coming in at number 15 is Captain America: The First Avenger, one that I personally have a lot lower on my list. But they actually gave it a lower score than I did, which is kind of strange. But like I said, these scores aren't too accurate that I gave it. But Captain America: The First Avenger, it's always been that weird Marvel movie for me, and that's what I'm assuming what it is for a lot of people. But I'm gonna be completely honest. It's either with this one, it was never in the middle ground. It was either in the bottom 5 or the top 10. It was no really in between, and so that's why it's kind of balanced out there. There's a lot of people that don't like this movie, me included, and there's a lot of people that think it's one of the best Marvel movies. But what really doesn't do it for me is the third act of the movie where where Captain America himself completes his arc, and you just don't care anymore, and the movie keeps going, and that's what my big problem with it was, and that's what I'm assuming what it is for everyone else. And so Captain America: The First Avenger got a 52 by the fans. Coming in at number 14 is Iron Man 3. I thought this would get a lot lower. Like I said, there was actually quite a few lists, about 4 or 5, where I saw this movie get number 1 on the Marvel list, and I completely get that. But I completely get why they have it at number 1. I have it in my bottom 5, I think. But there's some people that just really dig this movie, and it goes for a completely different tone from the MCU. And I actually really enjoy the tone. I think it's just more of the movie itself. If the movie was a little bit more original and not forgettable and had a better villain, it'd probably be in top 10 for sure for me. It's just a lot of the key working parts of a superhero movie fell flat, and that's what I'm assuming it did with everyone else. I always like the tone of this movie, but yeah, the fans gave this one a 53, so Iron Man 3 beat The First Avenger by 1. Anyways, number 13 is Doctor Strange. Now, this is where I'm assuming people... That's the thing. I think we've been in good tier since Age of Ultron. It's just these scores don't really make much sense to how it turned out. But anyways, Doctor Strange, I think people just see it as probably the best Marvel solo outing. Well, actually, never mind, I take that back, because there's a lot more Marvel solo outings on this list. But this is probably one of the better origin movies. Well, besides, the movies ahead of this. But this is one of those movies that it really nailed the first Doctor Strange movie. It's not meant to, have, like, endgame stakes. It's just supposed to introduce Doctor Strange. It did that. It wasn't anything too crazy, and that's why I think why it got here. But I think it's a lot more than that. I think there's actually a lot of great messages in the movie, and Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange is perfect casting by God himself, I swear. And the fans gave this one a 57. Don't let that fool you. That still means over half of the fans liked it. Okay, coming in at number 12 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. With this one, it's either they had it in the top 10 or at the very bottom. It's either that they hated this one or they loved it. I personally think this one's middle of the road when it comes to Marvel. But for the people that love this movie, I know exactly why. It's because it was Marvel at it's probably the most Marvel movie, because it has the jokes, it has the emotions, it has the colors, it has the great music. It's why this Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, like I said, is the most Marvel-like movie, but still kind of takes its original path. But I think there's some people that have it in the bottom just because the once again the villain, or they didn't like the whole how the movie just, it's almost like a hangout movie where, oh, you have this storyline and you have this storyline. People didn't like that. They were kind of separated for the first like 2 hours of the movie. So that's why I think it kind of ended up exactly at middle of the road, because number 12 is like right in the middle for Marvel movies. And so that's why this one got a 65. Coming in at number 11. Well, this one was actually tug of war with number 10 and 11. It was playing tug of war with another movie. But number 11 is Spider-Man Far From Home. Personally, I have this a lot lower. This one I have it about at number 15. I was kind of I like the movie, but I've always been kind of on it. Like, I think it's a good Spider-Man movie. It's just I don't think they got the Mysterio sequences were good, but I just don't like all the choices that they made, especially, spoilers for Far From Home, killing him. Well, if they really did. But there's a lot of just not a lot of the comedy in this movie didn't work for me, and the movie heavily leans on comedy. There's just a lot of scenes in this movie where I also felt like it was kind of rushed within the first kind of 15 minutes, but there is a lot of movie in this, and so I get why they cut that down, but I would have preferred a little bit more time in Queens before we went on this trip to Italy. But yeah, the fans gave this one a 69. Okay, coming in at number 10 is, well, its predecessor, Spider-Man Homecoming. Like I said, they were going back and forth. It was either, when I was adding up the list, I was like, okay, now Far From Home's in front of Homecoming. Oh, now Homecoming's in front of Far From Home. Far From Home, Homecoming. It was doing that the whole entire time, in between these two places as well. But Homecoming won the battle, and I get why. And the key reason is Michael Keaton's Vulture, and that's what I think it is. And the fact that I think personally it's the stronger movie, but yeah, Homecoming. I think just the fans like the like almost like the Breakfast Club feel of it. Like I said, the villain was a lot better this time around, and that's what I'm saying, because these top movies, I like all of these top movies, and the fans like all of these too. So I don't really know how to elaborate. It's just a matter of preference at this point. Which one goes above the other, and that's how all Marvel movies go. Okay, coming in at number 9 is Captain America. Wait, sorry, let me backtrack. Spider-Man Homecoming got an 80. Now at number 9, okay, Captain America Civil War. And that got, well, I'm not going to say the score yet. I'm losing it. But personally, this is my favorite Marvel movie, and one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in top 20 for sure. But Civil War took everything. Well, there's some. It's weird. Civil War started a bunch of stuff I love about the newer Marvel movies, but also started a lot of stuff I don't really love, but yet it's my favorite. But the main reason why it's my favorite is because of the conflict between Iron Man and Captain America, and the rest of the effects and ripples that this has on the MCU. We are still getting references about this movie in WandaVision. They're not making references to Spider-Man Homecoming and WandaVision, not making references to Ant-Man. And I know that those are a lot smaller scaled movies, but Civil War, it's just a bunch of people fighting in an airport. And so it is kind of small scale, but grand in scale when it comes to the characters, and it has such a rippling effect. I know people's big complaint about this movie is, why is it called Captain America Civil War? Why can't they just call it Civil War? And I think that's the dumbest excuse you can do to try to criticize it. It's just because it's a Captain America story about, it's the core and the heart in the movie is about Captain America and how he stands up for what he thinks is right. Personally, I'm still Team Iron Man. And WandaVision is kind of like, it's funny, I saw this post. They're saying, WandaVision is complete evidence that Tony Stark was right about the Sokovia Accords. And when you think about it, he was, because, now a whole entire town is hostage in Westview. So here we are in WandaVision. So, yeah, Captain America Civil War got an 82. Coming in at number 8 is the first Avengers movie. Of course, I think people, I personally have this at my number 2. I love the first Avengers movie. I'm never going to be forgetting when I saw this in a cinema cafe. It's a like a those of you who don't know Cinema Cafe it's a theater chain that's very small and local in my area. But yeah, I'm never gonna forget when I saw this movie the first time. I saw it of course with my dad and my mom, and oh my god, I think I was like around 8 years old, and I couldn't believe I was watching Captain America and Thor fight together. Because I watched all these movies before, because I was just like, oh, Iron Man's Iron Man, Thor's Thor, Captain America's Captain America, and being an 8-year-old and watching all of them come together to fight Loki, Thor's brother, it was just also like when I was 8 years old, and it's one of those movies for me personally I just will love for the rest of my life and watch many more times. And I'll probably, within my lifespan, I'll probably end up watching this movie more than any other Marvel movie. But yeah, I think a lot of people place the fans play this here because they have a lot of respect for it, because I know the fans it hasn't really held up for a lot of the fans. But so that's why it's kind of been slipping as of lately, because it's just the first one. Of course, Infinity War and Endgame gets a lot more things right, especially from an action standpoint. But for me, the first Avengers, I think, handles the overall Avengers and the characters the best. So yeah, the audience gives this one an 84. Coming in at number 7 is Black Panther. There's the people. There's quite a few lists where I was seeing like this at number 1, then the next one was at number 20, or in the next one it was number 3, and then it was at number 22. So it was one of those other ones that it was either that was at the very top or the very bottom. I didn't really see any middle of the road for this one either. But overall, as you can see, there's a lot more people that had it in the very top than the bottom, because it was like number 1, Black Panther. Another one, Black Panther. Number 1, Black Panther. And that's how it kind of went for a little bit. But yeah, I've always really liked this movie. Of course, the third act is not perfect, and that's one of the side effects of having one CG team, because when you have one CG team for the biggest franchise in the world, that's kind of stupid. Not gonna lie. And they didn't have any. Something I noticed is they did not have a lot of people for. I think Sony paid their own CGI people, and that's why Spider-Man Far From Home is the best looking Marvel movie we've had since Guardians of the Galaxy 2, because they're constantly, the CG team, they work and work and work, and I'm like, why can't you just hire more people? And that's the side effect of what the ending is like for Black Panther for me, because when I see 2 CGI guys fighting in a panther suit falling in a CGI cave, fighting on a CGI train, and occasionally CGI places their head in there, I just kind of feel detached within that last 30 minutes or so. But before that, it's a complete, amazing, one of the best Marvel movies ever, until the third act, where it kind of gets a little like, what? Because I'm telling you, the CG was amazing within the first 2 acts. Everything looked crisp and clean, and that's another side effect. They kind of work through the movie, I noticed, because the best shots are in the beginning of the movie, and that's where I get kind of confused of Black Panther. But don't get me, I love this movie. Chadwick Boseman is fantastic in it, and they get a lot. It's probably technically, minus the technical issues with the craft of this, on paper, this is probably the best solo outing there is. Okay, coming in at number... Wait, track back for a second. Keep on making this mistake. Black Panther got an 87. Coming in at number 6 is Thor Ragnarok. Can't talk. Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok were another one playing tug of war with each other. One list, it was like, okay, Black Panther's in front of Ragnarok. Oh, Ragnarok? Panther. Ragnarok? Panther. But of course, Ragnarok ended up beating Black Panther, and I think it's solely because of how funny this movie is, and it's such a breath of fresh air for Thor. If this wasn't a Thor movie and if it wasn't funny, Black Panther would definitely be ahead of this. But they get so much more right than the last 2 movies. It's so refreshing, and plus it's a lot more happy of a movie than Black Panther. I don't want that to sound bad. It's Black Panther, of course, it has a good ending and all that. It's a happy ending. Yay, Wakanda's saved. But Ragnarok, it's a light intense that really works, and that's what Taika Waititi had to bring to the table, and he gets that really good, and I can't wait for Thor, Love and Thunder. So Yeah, Thor Ragnarok got an 88. Coming into top 5, number 5 is shockingly Iron Man. I thought this was going to get like number 10, number 15 area, but a lot of people have a lot of respect for this movie, and I think this is the place I have Iron Man on my list personally. So I was really happy to see that the fans see what I see in Iron Man, and this is probably the most original tone a Marvel movie has ever had, just because it's the first one. I've probably watched this movie about 6 times within the last couple months, and I've definitely found a lot more respect for it within the last couple months because it's funny that the Iron Man suit in 2008 looks better than the Iron Man suit in Infinity War and Endgame. That's just my take. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure Infinity War and Endgame, they put a lot of work into it. But I think the Iron Man suit looks probably best in Iron Man or Iron Man 2. And because I'm always convinced that he's in the Iron Man suit. With Infinity War and Endgame, not so much. But yeah, it's a great solo outing. Robert Downey Jr. is perfect casting. It's a great startup to the Marvel movies. It doesn't set up everything the whole entire movie. It just sets up something in the after credit, which is nice to see. So I think people have a lot of respect for this movie. They enjoy it because it's the first one. Robert Downey Jr. in his first role as Iron Man. People probably get a lot of nostalgia for that, and that's why it's at number 5. And the audience gave this one a 94. My God, I've been talking for 30 minutes. Let's get through 4 movies to go. Coming in number 4 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I thought this movie was gonna get like 2 or 3, but just number 4. That's basically the same thing. But yeah, people really, really, really love this movie, me included. I think it's at my number 3 or maybe 4 as well. But yeah, it's just the most. When you look back and see when this movie was released, it's the most serious one. It's the most serious Marvel movie till that date, because it was such a fresh of breath air for Captain America's character, because no one was really sold on Captain America in his first movie or in Avengers. So when people got this movie, they're like, oh yeah, Captain America. And that's what it did for me too. I'm never going to forget watching this. This is one of those movies where I vividly remember watching this in theaters. And I remember exactly what theater I saw in it. It's closed now due to COVID, sadly. But yeah, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Best part about this movie is, part of the title, The Winter Soldier. How scary he is, because it's one of those. I'm just glad that this movie doesn't make jokes about his metal arm, because that would just totally lift the weight off of the seriousness of him. The movie makes no jokes about him. He's always scary. The score when he shows up is terrifying to be around. They show him sparingly, and they just really make him scary. And that makes every single action sequence in this movie extremely intense, and has some of my favorite. Sorry for that interruption. Worst fear happened where, my camera runs out of storage as soon as I get to the end of the video, so I just kind of dumped all of it and restarted. Well, not restarted, but I'm continuing on what I was doing. Anyways, like I said, this Winter Soldier, favorite action in the whole entire MCU, because it's actually scary. I don't have, people making jokes in the middle of it about, how someone's arm looks funny. It's scary, it's intense, and that's where I just feel like when action in these movies, sometimes when they pop jokes in the middle of them, and I just lose all emotional gravity to it, and I don't care anymore. I'm just kind of waiting for the action sequence to be done, because I don't think a movie's gonna have. Well, Endgame kind of did it, but I don't think it's gonna have a bunch of jokes, and then 5 minutes later, Captain America's gonna be dead, because I just don't buy it. Because no one would ever make a joke in the middle of an intense battle. But yeah, Winter Soldier, it's the most intense action there is, and it's one of my favorites, and they gave this a respectful 95. Coming in at number 3 is Avengers: Infinity War. I wanted to see which one you guys probably thought it was. You probably thought it was going to be Infinity War or Endgame, who knows. But yeah, Infinity War, the fans just love this one so much. Most people, it was funny, because this one and Endgame was also playing tug of war with itself, because it was either like the more of critics rankings had this at like number 10, 11, or 12, and then the fans had Infinity War at like number 1, and then with Endgame it's either like the fans had this one at like number 7 or 8, and then like the like more critical people gave this like number 2 or number 1. So yeah, Infinity War though, I know this is a fans list, but a lot of fans are critics as well. So yeah, Infinity War, this is the one where everything just, everything just comes together. It's the funniest, well, not the funniest. It has some of the funniest written dialogue in the whole MCU, because it's more satisfying to see all these characters come together, especially with the Star-Lord Iron Man dynamic. I thought that was probably one of the funnier things about the movie. But yeah, Infinity War, they love it because, one, Thanos is actually really threatened. Well, Star-Lord makes fun of his chin, but in most of the action sequences, they really don't make fun of him. They take him seriously. But, yeah, but the good thing about Star-Lord, he still stays true to his character. It's something that he'd say to someone, but, there's no one says a joke about Thanos or anything like that that's out of character. No one does the, something's definitely hurting from Justice League, or bleeding, I should say. But it never goes that track, and so that's why they handled Thanos really nicely, and he has the most amount of screen time in the movie. And yeah, the whole entire ending is exactly what I wanted it to be, and that's what we got. So yeah, anyways, the audience gave this one a 97. Number 2 and number 1, it is probably the biggest battle between the two out of all of them. Out of all of them, this was the biggest battle between number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2. They probably went back and forth about a total of 20 or so times. So this is what it ended up being. I just wanted to get to a certain amount of it, and then I was done. I wasn't gonna, because I felt like if I was doing it for an amount of time, I would like kind of do it until one was over another. So I kind of I just stopped when I got to a certain point. I was like, okay, this is it, because it's not the way I would think the audience really would feel, because this quite shocked me. But anyways, number 1 and number 2, basically, they both got a 100. But like I said, I did a lot of dividing and stuff like that. So I'm going to tell you the score for number 2. The score for number 20, for not 22. The score for number 2 is 99.9, and the score for number 1 is 100.2. I wanted to get to 100, but I had to stop. It kind of overlaps a little bit. But yeah, number 2 is Avengers Endgame. I expected this to be number 1. I think everyone expected this to be number 1, but it wasn't. Something else beat this. If you guys are diehard Marvel fans, you know what it is. But yeah, Avengers Endgame, it's the end to everything. It makes sense that this is at least in the top 5. Personally, on my opinion, I have this over time, I had this around about 7 or 8. I think I have Infinity War at 8 and Endgame at 7. I love both of them, believe me. Marvel is my favorite of all time. Look at this. Look at that. I'm not, just because I have Infinity War and Endgame a little bit lower on my personal list doesn't mean I hate them. I love both of them. And yeah, but there are Marvel movies out there I think I have personal hot takes on that I think are better. And yeah, I think Infinity War and Endgame definitely have problems. But this isn't my list, this is the fans' list, so we're going to get into why the fans love this movie. It's because it's the end. It's a 3-hour movie that feels like an hour and 45 minutes. You are constantly entertained. You are always invested. The final act hour, I'm just never going to forget that theater experience for the rest of my life. Of course, I saw this on the Thursday night showing as early as I possibly can, in the nicest screen I could possibly see this in. And so it was definitely quite the experience to see it with a bunch of fans while everyone was showing up at the end. And it's just the Marvel movie. And yeah, that's why Avengers Endgame got a 100. And then at number 1 is Guardians of the Galaxy. I did not personally expect this to get number 1. I was expecting it to get number 5, number 6. But I was extremely shocked when I saw most lists have Guardians of the Galaxy at the very top of it. I was like, wow, I can't do anything about that, and I'm just going to add it. And it's not like I accidentally went over the same one over and over again. I was genuinely finding most of the lists. It's not like I selected which list. Of course, I wasn't going to count a list that only had 20 of the movies. It had to be all 23. But yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, first one, made it to number 1. And I just kind of went from list to list that I trusted. From, of course, the sources on Letterboxd. I just kind of went from list to list as long as they had a description on their Letterboxd. But yeah, like I said, Guardians of the Galaxy, people love it. For a while, it was my second favorite, if not my favorite, and after my most recent rewatch, I think I lowered it to number 5 or 6. But like I said, I love most of these Marvel movies, and yeah, the thing about me personally with the Marvel movies is not so much because, from a critical standpoint, I actually have a lot of problems with Marvel as of lately, especially with their jokes that could have been intense moments for just as of lately. But overall, the brand as a whole, I am too attached to these characters to give up at this point. And what sells the Marvel movies right now are its characters, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, everyone. I love WandaVision so far. It actually is kind of taking itself seriously and has that good balance. And I will be doing a list, by the way, where I include WandaVision on my 23. And I will be doing, of course, the same with Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki once that comes out. So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, people love it because it has that emotional heartstrings that it has, and it remains very funny. And it's a setup film, which fans love if they do it right. So yeah, that's the list by the fans. Of course, I give this one a 100 as well. So that's the fans ranked by the Marvel movies. Comment down below. What do you guys think this accurately represents the fans' opinions? What do you think? Do you think some scores were kind of weird? Just comment down. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this because, of course, this isn't my list. This is just me taking other lists and making an average of it and just telling you guys just to see what the fans think of what their average list is. Well, I'm a fan too, so I shouldn't really subject you guys. I'm a Marvel fan, obviously. So, yeah, anyways, that is the Marvel movies ranked. I need to get a thumbnail shot real quick. There we go, thumbnail shot. Okay. Anyways. It always gets locked. This finger for some reason. Anyways, if you're still watching this late into the video, thank you. It's probably about 40 minutes now. Probably one of my longer videos on here. But hey, you're talking about Marvel. You gotta talk about it. And at this point, you're talking about 23 movies in one video. So yeah, anyways, that's the Marvel movies ranked by the fans. So anyways, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that. And adios.